Hi, I'm Cindy.
And I'm Danielle.
Welcome to Unapologetically Females.
We wanted to create a fun, non-judgmental space where women can talk about their shared experiences.
Here we will normalize the challenges we face as females living in a society that dictates unrealistic and outdated expectations on what a woman should be.
Together, we hope to cultivate a supportive community of women who empower one another to courageously live unapologetically.
A quick disclaimer before we get started. Although Cindy and Danielle are licensed therapists, this podcast is not to be interpreted as therapy or a replacement of therapeutic services. It is strictly a conversation between two women about their experiences in the world. If you liked today's episode, please make sure to like and subscribe below. Also, follow us on all of our social media platforms at Unapologetically Females. With that being said, we hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome back for another episode. We're super appreciative of the support we've received since releasing our first handful over this last month and a half now.
Month and a half, probably. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much to our two listeners. No, I'm just kidding.
We surprisingly have had way more engagement than we had.
Than we thought we would.
Yeah, than we thought we would.
That's so nice to see. Yeah.
We appreciate it. On today's episode, we're talking about the topic. The deliberation before we started is, what do we want to call this this episode? And I think we just have to call it what it is. So even though we didn't really like the way it sounded.
Friendship breakups.
And then I said we should call it Breaking Up is Hard to Do.
From the 80s song that...
Then I started performing.
And then you did, and we missed it on camera. So if you'd like to do it again.
It's okay.
Okay. I'll give you a glass of wine and you'll change your mind.
Great. So yeah, I mean, I think that there's so many layers. I started clearing my throat. I'm so sorry for those who've had to listen to my throat clearing in past episodes. I don't know why I do it.
Maybe it's like a nervous tick.
Maybe it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'll work on it.
Okay.
Okay. So we were talking about the various layers throughout life and how friendship breakups have how they've impacted us, how they've impacted people we've loved, care about, and another perspective of how it impacts parents of kids and the involvement from parents, which is a fascinating topic for me, at least. So yeah, that's kind of how it evolved at this point. We were talking a little bit before we started. Mm-hmm. So what is your experience with
friendship breakups?
Yeah.
Well, I was saying that I think that friendship breakups often come down to personality traits, in that I tend to avoid conflict, probably too much. So I may tolerate some things from people more so than you, who I know. No, and I respect the heck out of you for that. Like, you're very, I don't accept this, or and you'll tell people, and I'm not as good at. I'm getting better, but I'm not as good at it. So I think when I was younger, definitely I had a harder time in friendships calling out things that were bothering me, right? And when this topic first came up, a couple of our listeners actually gave us this idea, thank you. And I thought, well, I've never really experienced that. I've never really experienced a friendship breakup.
Which is fascinating.
Yeah. Right? But I guess I have. I think that it really made me introspectively look at myself and say, well, okay, what does that say about me? Like, am I too much of a people pleaser? Am I not assertive enough to put my feelings at equal value as somebody else's feelings?
Sure.
Yeah, so I'm getting better.
I think for me, it hasn't always been, I've always had a mouth. Like, I've always, had, well, the look on your face of like, no shit.
I was just wondering what that meant, but I'm getting it now. You've always had a voice.
I've always had a voice
that comes out of your mouth.
Yep.
Okay, got
it's
it.
typically where.
Well, just want to clarify.
Yep. So I haven't always, I think I've refined how I use my voice over the years. I think when I look back at teenage years, even, I mean, going as far back, I have some memories of, you know, middle school and then high school, and then into my early 20s. And I think that at like when you're at that age, at school age, the need to fit in is so like dominating.
Totally.
You know?
And it comes down to self-esteem, right?
Right.
Yeah. Self-esteem versus other esteem.
Yes. And so I think that I was, I would compromise, you know, certain things because I wanted to be liked or be in the group or be, you know,
For sure.
let's not, because I also kind of remember it was, which is interesting to me because I feel like my daughter sometimes experiences this too, or still it's a thing within like little girlfriend groups where it's like there's the one, like, you know, and there's the group, and then
There's the powerful one.
Yeah,
Or
and
the leader.
and then like I feel like there's somebody always on the outside of the group, and then that person on the outside vacillates week to week, could be day to day, which is so unhealthy. But I vaguely remember some of that back, you know, when I was in school. And so I think that like fear of like, you don't want to be the one on the outs.
Right.
And so you just, even if it wasn't maybe a super healthy friendship, you like, I would just compromise and be like, okay, I'll go along with it to be liked, because I didn't have the confidence that I do now to go like, it really doesn't matter. Like my husband was saying the other day, I just want to tell her like, these are people you're never going to talk to, never going to see again. Like,
yeah, you're 8 years old.
Yeah, they don't matter.
Yeah.
Like, which is, you know, it's easy to say now, but
For sure.
you know, at that point in time in your life, it's all that matters.
Well,
you know?
yeah, and especially when you become a teenager, your friends really, and it's, you know, it's age appropriate that your friends are the most important influence or opinion that matter to you at that age. And so you're really trying to impress them or not upset them or fit in with them. And oftentimes against what your parents are telling you.
Right. Because there's always that too, where you're like, they're like, that friend probably isn't the best for you.
Right.
And you're like, you don't know.
Right. And now that I'm a parent, I'm like, oh crap, they did know. They were right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that when, or as you get older, I think you were saying earlier, how personality traits, and so I agree. I think that for me, yes, I've always been direct, but a lot of it for me has been confidence and knowing who I am and what I will allow or won't allow in my space.
Which is interesting because when you say knowing who I am and what I'll allow in my space and stuff, that goes back to, but we would conform to what other people wanted or expected of us in order to fit in. So I guess it's a maturity thing, right? It's or not necessarily maturity, but as you get older with time and experience, it changes, it fluctuates.
For sure. Because I think as I came more into myself and into my confidence throughout my 20s, the closer I got to my 30s, I definitely had to separate and kind of weed out some relationships that weren't serving me, that, you know, just were either unhealthy or just weren't things I didn't want in my space or, so, and I think some of those organically just kind of happened. And then, there's a couple that I remember like having like actual distinct conversations of saying like, this isn't working. Like, you know, I need distance. I need some space. And it's not even in a bad way, you know, it's not in an angry way or, it doesn't have to be ugly. It was at that point, you know, those conversations were respectful, but.
Right. Well, and I think maybe too, one thing that we don't realize when we're younger is that change is inevitable and people change over time. Interests change, personalities change. I like to think my personality has evolved into something different than it was in my 20s. And so with that change, it's okay to say, when I was this way is when we became friends. But now that I'm this way, we don't have as much interest or in common with each other.
It's
and that's
like
okay.
a marriage too. Like a lot of times when you get married super young, and some people it works.
Yep.
Like sometimes it works and you grow together in the same direction and all is well.
Yeah.
And other times you grow in very different directions.
Yes.
And your interests are not the same, and who you each were, or maybe who one person was when they entered that relationship has changed or grown confidence or matured and all the things. And so it's like, not only are you not that person, but the person you married is like, who is the person I married to now? Like it goes both ways.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Where's that person that I married? And yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't evolve or you shouldn't change. Like you still have to continue to go on your own journey of whatever that looks like for yourself, your own personal growth and self-discovery and all of that.
Well, and that's where your feelings are just as important as the other person's feelings. Making sure that you're not undermining your own feelings or ignoring your own feelings in order to make that other person's feelings more prominent.
And what's interesting is I think that I chronically did that probably in my early-ish 18 to 23.
Yeah.
I was, that is something that I would definitely say I did, where it was, if I even for dumb stuff, right? Like if I don't go out with, tonight with this, with this friend, they're going to be so upset, like whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And it's like, it was just unhealthy. And I would constantly do that. Like the guilt, the guilt I would feel.
Right. Well, and it's a hard line because I'm exhausted. I don't want to go out, or I don't want to go to the party, or I don't want to do something. But then, okay, so I stay home and now I'm missing out, right? You have that FOMO of like, oh crap, now everybody else is out and I'm sitting at home and I kind of wish I went, or, so it's hard. It's hard to decide what it is exactly you really do want at times. But I think with age, that does become easier.
Yes. Have you had a friendship breakup that was an intentional conversation or a confrontation, or have most of, like, for you, those situations, have they just been like, okay, and we don't ever talk again?
No, I have actually in my adulthood. And I would say that the other person's personality was she was much more, we're friends again today, but she's much more confident in her, the way that she holds herself and in what she stands for. And I mean, I'm very confident in what I stand for, but we just have very different personalities. And I think that she was a very strong, like knew what she would tolerate and knew what she wouldn't. And here's the thing. And I just backed down. And then we didn't talk about it again for like a year. We didn't talk for a long time. And then eventually we both circled back around and said, okay, let's talk about this. But
how did the initiation of that conversation?
She reached out.
Okay.
I'd give her all kinds of credit she reached out and just said, you know what, time has passed, and we both took responsibility for our place in the argument and became stronger for it as friendship.
I think another perspective of this is being a parent and your kids having their own friendship bracelets, friendship breakups, or like friendship quarrels. And, you know, right now my daughter will come home and tell us wild things about, you know, what happened in the group.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, this group is going to be irrelevant in your life, but okay, we'll continue to, you know, listen. It's very real for her. And
Yeah, it's her world right now.
yeah, exactly. And so but I'm like, she's 8 and it's barely starting. And as you know, I've watched other young, you know, kids in my life grow up and be at different stages, how that just continues, really, like the drama between, and unfortunately it is girls.
I know.
And
I was
that's the
just
part
going
where
to
I'm
say,
like,
I
ugh.
don't want to generalize, but I do
Yes.
feel that women have this conflict more than men.
Yes.
Yeah.
So to be like a carefree, like head in the clouds,
Yeah.
boy, just living his life, you know,
You're raising one.
like
Yeah.
my nephew is so like just like
Yeah.
sweetest kid on the planet.
Or they like beat the shit
And-
out of each other, get in a fight or whatever, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
and then
They're fine.
They're buddies
They're
again.
fine. Yeah,
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
It's so true.
But yeah, I think this is a really interesting topic. Of a lot of my current friends, we're friends because of our kids, right? Like we met because we were in the trenches together as moms. And yes, for sure, there's been some that have fallen away, or, but we have that common denominator of we met because of our kids, right?
You were in the same stage of life.
Same stage of
Yeah.
life. Our kids got along, so we
Yeah.
got along, or sometimes we made our kids get along because we liked each other.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But that being said, when we're talking about conflict and friendships, when you and I have talked about, we've witnessed when our kids aren't getting along, that creates conflict in the adult friendship
Yeah.
as well.
Well, so yes. And I have some friends that had, you know, kids younger than me. So they have kids in like high school and are experiencing that. And it is fascinating to me because I think back on like my high school days, and I can't remember any distinct like quarrel I got in with my friends. And I don't really remember my parents ever getting involved with
I
parents.
was going to say, yeah,
And so,
my mom never was involved with any of my
Yeah.
friends' parents.
like my parents
or
knew
friends
my
with
friends' parents for the most part, like my close friends. You know, like the one house that I was allowed to spend the night at was my friend Melanie's house because my parents knew her parents and trusted them, and they're just the most amazing family. And so we were like, that was my one place I was able to spend the night.
Yeah,
but I just don't ever remember a situation where, if there was like my parents getting involved in drama that I had. But what's fascinating is our researcher, Georgia, was sharing with us how she hadn't experienced the parental involvement in the teenage drama until she moved here,
Right,
which is fascinating also.
right. From the Midwest to Arizona. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's very real. I guess it's not isolated because the people that I know that have shared stories where similar to what you're saying, they have this friend group, and a lot of that friend group grew up or moved through life together because their kids were friends, and then the parents became friends. And someone was recently sharing a story with me just about two of the daughters within that group ended up having a situation that happened, and the parents in that group, I think it was 5 or 6, different couples. The parents all chose sides,
Right.
And I'm like, over high school, the high school
argument that the high school
drama.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. Like, it's easy for me to say, oh, I would never get involved because that hasn't presented itself for me at this point.
Right.
But my initial thought would be like, figure it out. You know, like, we're staying out of this. Like, and to have the perspective of, this is a moment in your life and it's going to pass. Right. And you either are going to be friends or you're not going to be friends beyond that. And it won't make or break either one of you.
What's interesting to me about that is, are we giving our children the message when we do that? So when we decide that because of our children's arguments with someone else, we make a decision about our own friendships, are we giving our children subconsciously the message of, you're kind of running the show? Like, your decisions are making my decisions and me
can impact our whole family.
Yes. And, I'm not sure that's okay.
Again, like, I haven't experienced that. So, and maybe there is something. I don't know what that something is, but maybe there is something, because all parents, when my daughter has issues with her friends now, or she'll say, like, this kid wasn't kind to me, all of me wants to be like, I'm gonna go freaking show him, like,
Mama Bear comes out.
Like,
yes, when
like, I'm ready
my
to freaking
kids
go.
were little, and they would talk about, like, on the playground, so and so hit me with their water bottle. I was like,
I will square up to that kid. Yeah.
And then I'm like, wait, they're 5.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I would never.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, but your first instinct is to
protect,
back your kid and protect them.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, and be angry also, even though at times it doesn't seem reasonable.
Right. So there's like that side of me that can kind of understand how the parents get involved, and then the other side is like, I don't know how far you. I mean, I think it. And sometimes I say it to my husband, like, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to tell that little shit, like, something like that. But if somebody truly did, though, like, obviously hurt my kid or was completely out of line and inappropriate, and they weren't protected by an adult that was supposed to be protecting them at the time or keeping them safe, then I'm also the mom to, like, show up there in that sense.
No. I mean, justice sometimes needs to be pointed out and served in extreme situations, for sure. But
to get, like, wrapped up in the drama,
right,
in, like, prolonged drama,
and I'm wondering, like, it brings me back to a thought of generational. Like you were saying, your parents weren't really like, your parents probably wouldn't have behaved in the same way that some of our friends and maybe us too have or might behave in the future. So what's so different?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's like their involvement. It was like they were able to say, you guys
are a bunch of idiots, so, like, figure it out.
Your kid's behavior has nothing to do with you, right? Or just because your kid said something inappropriate or wrong or something to my kid, that doesn't make me like you any less or think differently of you. So they were able to separate, I'm assuming, the difference of kid versus parent. Whereas now, I feel like we more often lump it all together. Like, if your kid does something age appropriate, is an asshole about something, right? Then sometimes we're like, well, then the parent's an asshole, and we don't. Yeah, it's just interesting.
It is interesting, and to get wrapped up in it to the point where then you are, like, the parents are, like, beefing with one another,
right?
Like, that fascinates me,
right? For sure. But again, what message does that give the kid about the power that they have over the family and the parent and the relationship in that way, right? So, I mean, I am not writing any books on parenting, that's for darn sure. And I do think it's interesting that it's changed in that way over the years, generation to generation.
Sure.
Yeah. So, and then it also makes me think, okay, so what do we want to tell our kids or teach our kids about friendship moving forward? Not that they're going to listen, but what is it that, we want them to know? It's okay if somebody changes, and it's good to respect that and know that.
Yeah, I think that there's setting the stage for like friendships aren't always lifelong, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
The expectation that we have to be friends forever, and if we're not, it says something negative about you or I is not real. That's not a real thing or a healthy perspective, because it's going to set you up for failure and feeling like shit,
Yeah.
And so I think that it's to have a mutual respect that and understanding that we are friends today. We have this friendship, and understanding that everyone changes and goes through changes. And sometimes that means that at the end of that, we aren't as close.
Right.
You can still respect and that time in your life with that friend can still be meaningful and important.
Yes.
And also not always maintain its same form.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And respectfully, honor each other in that way of you've changed, I've changed. You're still a great human being. We just don't have things in common anymore, or we've made different choices, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have probably, I could count on one hand, like friends that I'm close to. Because the reality is, once you have kids and a marriage and a career, it's like, it is hard to find time for your friends, consistently at least. And so it's like, it's more sporadic and spread out throughout the year.
Right.
And so over time, I almost think as you get older and go through those stages of life, sometimes friendships just organically kind of weed themselves out and disappear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or just more removed. And so, yeah, I would say I could count on one hand, like the 5 people that I'm really close to, don't talk to every day. It comes, we respect, it comes back to that piece. We respect one another in the stage that we're at.
Right.
And so it's somehow it works. So it's like we can go months without talking, and then pick right back up where we left off. And there's no hard feelings. There's nothing. And, those are, really solid friendships that I appreciate. And I need right now at that point in my life, I need low maintenance friends.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. And I've talked before in previous podcasts about how lucky I am to have amazing group of friends from college, and we all appreciate something different about each other. And so for one, I might go to if I wanted to go out and have a great time, I might call one of them. But if I was like really down in the dumps, I might call the other one, so we all play different roles in our friendships in that way. But it brings me back to a quote that one of my friends told me a while back was, sometimes it's better to have 4 quarters than 100 pennies. So to have 4 good friends that you really value and you share, that hold more value to you in your life than having 100 friends who have less value or worth.
Right.
Not worth, that's not fair. But less value to you.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's funny because I think when I was younger, that was like, what size is your group? Like
Absolutely.
how many friends? So that's what that made me think of. It's like my group has like 15 people in it, and now it's I don't have time for 15 friends, but
Well, and now like for George's generation, it's like, well, how many likes do you have?
Yeah.
How many followers do you have? Do you know how? Then that like gauges your popularity, right? Like, oh well, she's official on Instagram or, you know.
Is that the blue check you were talking about?
Yeah.
Verified.
Verified. Oh, verified official. Same thing.
Official. Yeah. They mean it's totally is the same thing.
But yes, you know, like, so then that like raises your popularity. That raises your like, I don't know, probably self-worth and.
But like fake self-worth.
Right.
Not real.
Right. But also when we were kids, before the whole social media era, the more people that knew you and, you know, liked you or came to your party or whatever.
Status.
It was a status.
It was a
thing.
status.
Yeah. And so that, you know, 100 pennies, how well do you really know them?
Right.
How invested are they really in your well-being? Doesn't matter, but because there's lots of them.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good point. And that, you know, to the social media, we talked about that in the social media episode, but it's changed how we do friendships. And so thankfully, you know, like I can't imagine the stress it would have added onto me as a teenager.
Yeah.
But that component I didn't even really think of, the likes and the follows and stuff like that's, and the breakups, the friend breakups happen
For
on a
sure.
public platform
On a
now
public
too.
platform, right? Like, you're having beef with so-and-so, but now everybody that follows you knows about it because that person posted about your argument or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure.
You know what though? I do know some adults. That's fascinating. Yeah, that they use social media
As like digs.
Yeah.
Like send out like, yeah, I've seen that too.
I have a friend. I'm trying to do this in a way that
Doesn't
honors the relationship with the person that does this. And she always, she'll put a comment on social, and she used it, like, her and I would laugh about it because it was like, you know, what was going on within the family, you know, or like it had to do with her, you know, like, so this person would like post a, you know, a meme or you know, said the little dig, and it was like, cause she wouldn't actually confront, you know, the person. And so, yeah. So now adults use it, especially maybe, I would say adults that maybe aren't in like healthy spaces, or who are just feeling angry or down or whatever, use that as a way to provoke or to get something off their chest, but not directed at the person, avoid confrontation. And then it's also used as a way, like, I blocked that person. It's so fun. Grown people. Like I, not only did I unfriend them, but I blocked them. Which is interesting.
Yeah.
That's
one way to break up a friendship.
Yeah, it's another layer though, that these days, these times, not these days,
These days,
how you can break up with someone.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's a topic that maybe we don't really think too deeply about very often. But when it happens, it can be really influential. It can be really significant.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think I guess it doesn't really matter at what stage of life you're in, because friendship breakups can be hurtful. And, you know, in high school or, you know, as a teenager, adolescence, it feels like the end of the world.
Yep. Yeah.
And maybe in adulthood for some, it's felt that way too. I remember, I think again, it was like I was 18 or 19 and a friend of mine, her and I stopped talking for, I don't know how long it was, to be honest, maybe a year, but it was a really good friend. And I remember being, I was really disappointed and sad about it. But, you know, we're still friends to this day. Like it was a moment in time. But I do think that it isn't talked about how that impacts each one of us in different ways, and understanding that mutual respect part of, like, you can still honor and appreciate the time you had with somebody and the friendship that friendship was still real.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
That was still special or important in your life, and to respect the different paths that you're on. And it's okay to go in different directions.
Right. And each person who you bring into your friendship circle poses a different place there, you know, poses a different reason for being friends with you. So yeah, it just kind of understanding that diversity in friendships is pretty cool.
For sure. So whether you have 100 friends or 4 friends,
Yes.
lifelong friends or short-term friends,
Short-term friends.
they all serve a purpose. They all have meaning. It's all special.
And it's okay to break up sometimes.
If it's not serving you, if it's not serving them,
Respectfully break up.
respectfully break up.
Yeah.
That was good. Little disclaimer or note for next week. We'll be taking off a week. So our next episode will be out July 3rd. But in the meantime, you can catch us on all our social platforms. And until then, I'm Danielle.
And I'm Cindy. Thanks for listening.
See ya.